Hemshech Chaim Beis, Volume 1, middle of Discourse 41, chapter Kuf Samad Gimel 163, page 326. So, the last chapter, 162, discussed the Torah, the interface. And this itself is following the introduction to that Atzilus' interface. So we're dealing with the interface between the divine and existence, two disparate and antithetical realities, and how we integrate them, how we reconnect them or reunite them. Or even better said, how we, through our work, connect back to that source. The creation connects to the source. And this was all part of the longer discussion of the difference between Avos and Matan Torah. And obviously, Torah is now the interface that's connecting Atzilus to Biyah. With the Avos, as we learned and discussed at length, were unable to achieve the transformation of Biyah. The primary work was in Atzilus. It was in a more spiritual realm. Now we're talking about transformation and integration between the two. So the Avos laid the groundwork for this integration. We discussed at length. And all that began as an explanation of Er HaGvul and Er HaBli Gvul, the finite and infinite energy, or you can say the transcendent and immanent energy, how they function. With the point being that the purpose of the transcendent energy is to bring bittul into existence. The purpose of the immanent energy is to create existence. And the question he asked all the way back then, going back to where he began this whole discussion, the Shavuos Maimer. So the question, before he started speaking about Avos and Matan Torah, he's just discussing there that it doesn't the Or Pnimi, the immanent energy, also affect bittul? In other words, also help elevate or transform, you could say, refine the worlds? And the answer was no. On its own, it's primarily Kav Hamida. It's a measured flow to create. And the fact that it brings bittul into the worlds, like Atzilus brings bittul, which Atzilus is an Or Pnimi, is because of the impact of the transcendent energy. The words he used there, I'm going back all the way to chapter 129, just to connect it. The Zed Gufa Sha'er Pnimi, Yemeir B'chol Elmas Gam B'Elmas B'Yav, Yibam Chinas HaBittul, Zewai De'er B'Chinas Ein Sof. Because Kav Hamid, in other words, in order for the worlds, and the worlds of B'Yav, that there should be bittul, through the air of the Ein Sof. As we learned, how does the interface work? That the transcendent energy speaks to the immanent energy. And we learned that the immanent energy in its root is another track. The koyach of the God, the Er HaGvul, Shir Atzmi B'koyach, how he envisioned, how he estimated within himself the 10 spheres. But that itself is an outgrowth of Er HaBli Gvul, of the infinite possibilities. And then, as he says, min kanaf, it's of the same material, same fabric. It's oir, it's not keli, meaning that it retains the qualities of connection, dveikus, to its source, and constant expression of its source. However, it's an expression through gvul, through er hachesed, er hachachma, er bin, and so on. And then there's a reishon, there's an impression that remains in the er hagvul from the er habli gvul. All that comes to explain this point that Er HaBli Gvul informs the Er HaGvul in order to bring bittul into the world. So it's true, Atzilus will be the interface, but Atzilus is Gilui HaHelam and revealing the power of Bli Gvul even above Atzilus. So on one hand, we have here, as he keeps saying, the interface, but on the other hand, we have here a structure. On the other hand, we have a structure that has a place that connects to that which is beyond structure. And that's where the two meet. And that's why we're able, down below, the lowest levels, we're able to bring through the Er Pnimi, we're essentially accessing Er Makif. So it's like the Ratzon traveling through the faculty, so to speak. Now, the others did their part, which was to reconnect the Er HaGvul to its source. Like we said, go back to the Sher Shemaka. That's why it's more than the Kav Hamid. It's more than just the measured flow. As we said, they expanded the pipes to the extent possible, reconnecting it to its source, like before the Chet Sadas, at the beginning when things were in a complete state. However, transformation and bringing it Atzilus into Biyah, that requires a Hamshacha that comes a transmission from Er HaBli Gvul, not just the root of the Er HaGvul. So you have to go back to the mouth of the well, not just to the source, but beyond the source, Er Chadash, something new, New Yichud. Not just sustaining the world, not just reconnecting it to its source, but something completely new, which is Torah, and hence Torah becomes now the interface. So the way you can say Torah's interface is deeper than Atzilus interface, because Atzilus interface is because Atzilus connects, brings the air reflects the Bli Gvul, and the Keli reflects the Gvul as we discussed, or Chachmei La Chachmei Tata. But Torah, as we said, is the Hamshacha Atzmus. So Torah is really drawing down all the way from the Bli Gvul. He didn't make this distinction yet. Right now, for all practical purposes, Torah and Atzilus are very similar. But obviously, it's going to come down to the Torah in Atzilus itself. Torah is Chachma, and that's where that's it. So the last chapter, Kuf Samach Beis, 162, was all about the interface of Torah. Istata Baraisa or Bara Alma. Kutchabrichu Istata Baraisa or Bara Alma. Kutchabrichu is Etzem Ein Sof. That's beyond existence. Istata Baraisa is he looks into Chachma, and with this he creates. So it's like he says, from Aman B'Chachma, he looks into Chachma, it becomes Er Bli Gvul, he looks into Er Gvul, so to speak. And that has Ashra, the dwelling of the Ein Sof is in Chachma, as we discussed already, the difference between dwelling and Islapshus. And on one hand, Islapshus is more integrated, but on the other hand, it's diminished, and can be even impacted in a negative way like Olus. Ashra, on the other hand, is not as necessarily so revealed and integrated, but because it remains somewhat apart, it cannot be contaminated, it cannot be taken hostage. That doesn't mean it's not at all revealed. It's in the Keli called, Keli is no Keli, which as he said, is Chachma. And then he finally explained that all this, in Chachma there's the element of Riyah HaSeichel, that the Seichel of Chachma is able to see and perceive a truth that Bina and other lower levels are not able to perceive. They distinguish between the seeing with the Seichel and actual physical seeing. The Asad Lavei will actually be able to physically see and be completely tangible. Whereas today, even the highest Neshama is still Tzuriyas HaSeichel. With their heart they can see. They believe it is Chazakula. So their Seichel and their heart is able to see. But it's not Etzim Hushmamish. Asad Lavei, you'll have the combination of all. The whole flow will be. So what do we have? Chachma, therefore, is a container for the Er HaBli Gvul, but it's not yet in a state where it's physically seen as we see with the physical eyes, because it still retains its so-called subtlety. The goal, of course, and that's what happens also when you completely transform the material, so literally, physical eyes can actually see the highest levels. Good. Now we continue in chapter 163. And the Inyan in this is, let's remember the last piece we read was the parentheses. That they feel the sense of Hashem Echad, but it's not Mehusa Inyan until Vasakov. And that's literally the two types of Riyah. Seeing with the eyes and seeing with the eyes of the Seichel, of intelligence. The Inyan in this is Commission Mitzvah, but Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Hashalom. We find by Moshe Rabbeinu, Shahei B'chinas Yised Abba, he was the level of Yised Abba. We learned Yised Abba, if you remember. Yisad is Hashpah, transmits. In Abba, in Chachma itself, Yised Abba, the Yisad of Chachma is how Chachma is in already a state of transmission. That was where he was talking about, remember, Yisrael Saba Tfuna. So that's earlier discussion that Yisrael Saba was the Yisad of the Midas of Chachma, or Yisad of Chachma. So he goes on now and says, this is back in the earlier chapters. Sh'ama v'nachanu ma. We we learned in the previous chapter. She'ebchinas habitl dema chachma. So Moshe Rabbeinu, as he said, Abba said, "V'nachnu ma." Well, what are we? Because he was in a state of ma. Chachma is koyach ma, and that was the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Ma bitl chachma. So this level we've been discussing here, chachma, which is the level of Torah. And right, chachma nafkis, Torah comes from chachma, the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's a state of bittul. Afal became Amalei, Ein Shei Baruch Hu, and nevertheless, Ein Shei Baruch Hu said to him, it's an interesting expression, Ein Shei Baruch Hu said to Moshe, but Isis Achera, Yopone Lo Yiro, you will see my back, and my face you will not see. So even though Moshe Rabbeinu is Ma'ad Chachma, we see clearly, as he said in the last chapter, that he didn't see it all. Remember we said, how is it possible there can be levels in seeing? Either you see or you don't see. So physical seeing, absolutely. Either you saw it or you didn't see it. But when he said, for example, there's levels. It's not etzem mahus. If you don't see etzem mahus, there's levels of how deep your mind can comprehend or perceive. So we see here that even though Moshe Rabbeinu was Yisei Dav, and a less state of bittul, nevertheless Ein Shei Baruch Hu said to him, he's saying Ein Shei Baruch Hu because in other words he's referring to a higher level than what Moshe. Moshe is Chachma. Ein Shei Baruch Hu is higher than Chachma. Said to him, you could see my back but not my face. Shaloi Hod Hisig Pchins Primis HaChachma. Because he didn't comprehend Moshe, that is. The inner dimension of Chachma. Pchins Eidem Sof HaSheda B'Klei HaChachma Shalei. Remember, there's two parts here. There's how the Eidem Sof Sheda. So there's a higher dimension here that is dwelling. And then there's Chachma. And as we learned, Chachma is definitely a Keli. It's non-Keli. Bittul is a Keli for Eid HaBligvul, but it's still not the pure Eid HaBligvul. Because if it was, then what's the interface? The interface has to be something that also represents the structure. So Chachma is the meeting point, that subtle place where there's basically no container, but that itself is a container. It's already Eid HaPnimi. Remember, Chachma is the spark of a conception of an idea. We're not talking about unconscious. You're conscious of it, but it's like a seed. It's the bare minimum that's expressed. So it's just a spark. So the spark has in it the whole bligbul, but it's still at the end of the day a spark, and that's why he said that it's not Mahus Mamash. It's Riyah Sasech. That explains Moshe Rabbeinu. Even though Moshe was that level, nevertheless God said to him, Esau Baruch Hu said to him, I'll show you my back, but not my face. So you see clearly there's something he didn't say. What's Paneh? He types as Paneh, Pnimius HaKoch. So Chtzenius HaKoch, he had. That he had. But he did not comprehend that dimension. Doesn't mean he didn't experience it, but comprehension didn't have. Didn't have Riyah Mamash he didn't have. Then he adds the parentheses. Now he's going to connect this to what we learned in the previous chapter. Remember, the whole thing began actually in the parentheses, which is like a little interesting. Remember, he's explaining the whole emphasis on the word Hashra was based on the Zohar. The Zohar in Pashabol that says Achochem Eino Bereishit, the Shechinte Sharia Al Reishit. From the Ramaz, he explained that's the Chochem Shabbat. You say Reishit, what's Reishit in the head? Chochem Eino Bereishit. His eyes are on his head. So his head literally means his eyes are, obviously everyone's eyes are on their head. Yeah, so Reishit means in the Seichel. That's what it means. By us, our eyes, our eye sockets are in our head, but we could be seeing things with our heart. We don't look things necessarily with Seichel. Chochem, his eyes are within the Seichel. So he said that's Chochem. Chochem Eino Bereishit. So Chochem Eino Bereishit, meaning that he has a sight of the Shechina rests in his Seichel, in his Chochem. Then he explained that this is Hashra only, Sharia. Why? Because it's not Mahus Mamish, it's not actually Mahus. Right? Well, it's not, because it's not totally revealed. Then he goes on, right? It's shloim, the donkey is not changed, it's not much, it's Gilead Mahus. Okay. It's not Gilead Mahus. So now he's going back to explaining this in the parentheses. He's going to compare. Rashbi said that statement in Zohar Pasha Bolok is Rashbi speaking Rai Mehem. Rai Mehem is usually refers to Moshe Rabbeinu. But you have it like this.
It says the Rai Mehem, except to Rai Mehem.
Yeah. Well, in Zohar there's a section called Rai Mehem, which is usually associated with Moshe. Moshe said or didn't write, but said those ideas. So the Rai Mehem in Zohar is what was miscovered from Moshe usually. Here he's saying Shalom Rashbi the Rai Mehem. No, but it's usually Rai Mehem is definitely part of Moshe. So in that Zohar, you see right there's a black Zohar.
Yeah. Which one?
Bolok, let's look at Bolok already.
Oh, regarding Rai Mehem. The Rai Mehem is regarding Moshe.
I'm going to mention the Rai Mehem. Yeah? Let me see this. Let's see. Let's see the Zohar inside.
You find that one a lot of times where it says two.
No, it's Rai Mehem for sure. There's a bunch of sections. The Rai Mehem, probably the first one. Okay, let's just look here a second. Let me see what Bolok. What's this Rai now?
About Rai Mehem.
Why the?
So I find it especially when it says that it's regarding about.
Okay. That would solve that. So quick as that. Yes.
Design on alpha. Yep. Chachamim of Bereshit.
Just give me a second. Here we go. Pasuk for Omar. This is like this Rai Mehem itself.
So it is regarding.
No. Let's say Rai Mehem. Pasuk for Omar. Who's he saying it to? Chachamim of Bereshit. He can't.
He's talking about Moshe. Chachamim of Bereshit is talking about Moshe.
Yes. If he can't, asar ein the barnash al bereshe, dilma the gufo ye berave, ofi luchrach lachmiyat im kol bnei alma. In other words, but everybody it's in the eye, it's in the head. But by him, it's a special type of.
Where does it say these words? Chachamim of Bereshit. Yeah, that's not.
Yeah.
What's the hamshach over here? Be'ein aseicha de belibcha is chas.
What?
What's the hamshach in Ayin Beis? It says be'ein aseicha de belibcha is chas.
I'm looking for that lashon right now. One second.
Right here it says Moshe was Ramaz. I don't know if you have that Ramaz.
Yeah. I don't see that lashon. I don't see this chazir belief. Let's look at some symbols. Hashem Zeh Sham Rashi did it. L'Rayim Mehem Le'Be'ayin HaSeichel D'Belibcha is Chazak Kula. It's a second Zayah. It's not the Zayah Bala. I think you can combine two Zayahs here. Where do we see it's Chazak? It wasn't in the parentheses. Chazal Liba was here at the end of the chapter. Right here. Hashem B'Riyas Ein HaSeichel D'Be'ayin HaSeichel D'Belibcha is Chazak Kula. Remember that expression earlier? Belibcha is Chazak Kula? What does it say that there?
Remember, it doesn't say it.
No, it says here.
Yeah,
Right here. End of the chapter.
yeah, it's it.
Was it earlier?
No.
Look in Perek Lamed Hey and Tanya, it's there. You have to look at the sources to understand this, that's for sure. Yeah.
Where did he say it in the previous chapter?
5 lines, 6 lines from the bottom of the end of the chapter.
Oh, I see. The Belibcha is Chazak. By the way, Kuf Samach Gimel, he says the Belibcha is Chazak Kula.
Okay, fine, because speaking to him.
If he's not, well, the whole thing is not saying that.
Let me see this.
It's the whole thing. It's
What?
You want bigger Tanya?
Yeah. Lashon HaYimuka. That's the Zayah, yeah. Okay, this is the famous Lamed Hey that he keeps referring to. Chacham Sheireh Sof. Okay, it's definitely a beard in Tanya, this whole section here. As you see, he wrote Perek Lamed Hey right here. Okay. It doesn't mean the Lashon is Chazal. Okay, fine. So, Shomer Rash Bila Ramehem, I'll look it up and I'll. Bina Seichel, Ba'ayin HaSeichel, the Belibcha is Chazak Kula. The B'chinas Eres of Asher B'Chachma, Oye by B'chinas Riyas Ein HaSeichel, also Oye B'chinas Riyas Ein Mamash. No, this is what he says. But he says that he did not comprehend the Primis HaChachma. This is what the Rashbi is saying. The Ein HaSeichel, meaning with your Ein HaSeichel you're seeing Chetzenius Chachma. Riyas Ein HaSeichel. That's the so that Shed Chachma. That is what he's able to access. But not Upone not. Lost it lower, you have Riyas Ein Mamash. Basically, the Rabbi Rashab is saying, Yeshleimer, that the Riyas Ein Mamash is Pone, which Moshe did not have. And Riyas Ein Seichel is what he did have, and that's what he says Acheret. It's essentially what he's saying. Basically, what this the same discussion as earlier. So Chachma does have a Gili. It's in the form of Ashrah, but it's not Mamash Mulus.
And he spells it out clearly right after the parentheses.
Yeah. Behind the Ima Yedin so Shele B'Chachma means even though the divine infinite light dwelt in Chachma and wisdom in Kozeh Yochalir Shenim is Gala B'Chachma. Grak B'chinas Acharayim Led B'chinas Panim. It's possible that it shouldn't be revealed in Chachma, only the outer dimension of it, not its inner dimension. Alpha B'Shagam B'chinas Haponim Shele by even though you can't say that it's not there. It also dwells there. Because first of all, you're saying in Lashon, you said Chashadi. It dwells there too. Ki primis Abba, primis Atik. Because the inner dimension of Abba, of Chachma is the inner dimension of Atik. So Chachma has in it, in the deepest levels of Eid and Sof. Kol Mokem Enim is Galaboy. Nevertheless, it does not get revealed through in it. Only the outer and external dimension. Okay? This is critical in the interface. Remember, we have here now a bunch of levels. Islapshus, remember we learned Islapshus is complete manifest. It's completely beginned, enclosed. Where Shara can be concealed also. Then there's Islapshus has the downside, as he said. Islapshus is because it's diminished. That's why it can be mislapshus. To the point that it can be diminished to the extent that it can be Islapshus, that it's negative Islapshus. Gross. Right? The two types of Islapshus, whether the Nefesh Elokis is in control, the one who's dressed in, or the one who is the garment in control. Hashra, on the other hand, does not shaykh to that. Hashra remains somewhat out, but it's already a revelation. So it's a revelation. Nevertheless, its revelation is not muhus. It's taka not diminished, like in the Islapshus manifestation, which would be in the lower spheres on below Chachma. Chachma, however, there is a Gili because Chachma is a Keli. The Keli is no Keli, as he pointed out. So we have Chachma, we have now the interface of Chachma that you have. On one hand, it's already in Shtalshlus, it's the beginning of Rashis, the beginning of the spheres, first one, but it's still retained and it's still very much a spark, it still has an Gilead and Sof. But to make it a proper interface, it really has to be dancing on two Zvei has to be doing two things. So that's why he's making the point here that it's not Gilead Mahus Mamash, because if it was Ponim, it was revealed, then how will it serve Bina and lower levels? It would be too much revelation. So you have to say Chachma, what you have with Gili is the outer dimension. So Ein Sof is there, but it's not the full Pneumius of Ein Sof, which will come lost above. So Chachma serves as an interface. Remember, as a valve, if the valve is too open from the source, it won't be able to flow to the next level properly. So Chachma has to be a perfect valve that brings Ein Sof in, but not to the extent that it overwhelms it, that Chachma ceases to be Chachma, because it has to let afterwards serve the lower levels. Like we spoke about Atzilus, it has to be Eris and Kalim, Chachma Ilah, Chachma Tata, or else the interface is compromised. That's why he's making such a big fuss about this, to exactly get the level. So Chachma has it, but it's concealed. So the fascinating thing is we have, with human wisdom, when we have Chachma, we have a point. And we've discussed this at length. Moichin in general, and Chachma in particular, like Atzilus, is our springboard into Ein Sof. It's the way we, finite creatures, can move to a place that's beyond us, which is the key here. In the source, this is where the Shir Ashbe B'Koyach takes place. You can almost say. It's when the infinite spheres, the Eir HaBlikvul, begins to manifest. In the original, it's when he's Messiah 10 spheres. You can say that in its root will be the place where that which is beyond Chacham becomes Chacham. Even though you could argue that's even higher, obviously it's higher than that, but it's just a Me'ain Zeh. Because that's the whole point that he's trying to make here, is how these two meet. You see how precise he's being here. Chacham, Chetzein is premise. So, because on the other hand, if you say that you don't have the premise in there, so then Chacham is compromising the other side. So then how can Chacham ever reach to Bli Gvul? The Bli Gvul is not in there. So he has to say it's there, but it's not revealed. That's the purpose here. Wow. And obviously the goal then is to not only have Riyas Ein HaSeichel, like he said later, but also that you should actually have Riyas Mamish, Asagas HaMalchus, all the way in these higher levels. But that's only possible once you refine the Kalim and the Biyah. So now we have at least what Matan Torah accomplished, as we're going to learn, is the bridge. A Chachma Nafkis, Torah emerges in Biyah, not only in Atzilus. I'll give you an example for this. Example from us, again. From our flesh. Like in the mind of a person, the neshama, the lubish of neshama. neshama is manifest, is clothed, and dwells in the moyach of a person. Like he says in Tanya chapter 51, that the primary resting place and dwelling place, primary resting and dwelling of the neshama is in the meich, is in the mind. Which also, even scientifically, the mind is also the central nervous system. What controls all parts of the body is the brain. So the brain is not just a place where you think and conceive of ideas, it's also the central nervous system of life. So even the heart, should there's impulses, should the nerves, God forbid, should there be any severing from the brain to any part of the body, that's where the neshama rests. The neshama is not meichin. And we learned this also very, very early on. Remember we spoke about nefesh hamaskelis. Right. So the nefesh, neshama, is not seichel. But where it rests most is in the seichel.
But the neshama means neshama as a divine?
No, not necessarily. It means as a life force. Yeah. It means both. I think he's not emphasizing here this is not the point, because then he would have quoted from Pedig Test. And Pedig Test says nefesh is shade of a meich.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
And nefesh habamis is beled. He's bringing here meichin in general as a keli for the neshama. It means chayes. I'm saying if we're talking about nefesh habamis, that's Pedig Test and
but the chayes out there is the nefesh habamis. That's in the heart.
No, but the ikar neshama is in the body. Even the life part of the nefesh habamis is also in the mind. The mind is the central nervous system. It's the neshama. It's not a contradiction between Pedig Test.
This is like the neshama over here is like the power to move your fingers, for example.
That's the simplest level. It
right.
means the whole.
Okay, fine.
It means the whole soul. Everything the soul is going to bring to a person rests in the mind. That's Pedig now. That's where the Odin. He talks about the Odin. Pedig. It's the central life force comes through the mind. It doesn't rest in the heart. It doesn't rest in your fingers. In the mind. That's where it rests. That's what it says there. Okay. Ukule b'meichen sheberosh. That's all Lashon there. Ikon ha'mishkan v'ashra'asa ukule b'meichen sheberosh. It's all in the mind of the head, the brain. Afal pikein hein ad masi kos haneshama yichamahi. Nevertheless, a person cannot comprehend the personality, the inner personality of the soul. What and how. Ich is how. Ich is how. What? How and what? Echoma, echus, and mahus is echoma, by the way. That's where the word echus and mahus comes from. You say echus.
Echus comes from ech.
Ech, yeah. Ech, how is it? No, kamos is kama. How many? In other words, quantity. Ech is quality. What type is it? Echus. And mahus is also, mahus is from the word mazeh. So you could say, it's there. Like we spoke about Mitzias and mahus earlier. Mitzias, we know there's a soul, we know there's a life force, but what is it? Tell me about its personality. So even though it rests in the mind can't comprehend its real personality. So we see here right away that something is in the mind and doesn't necessarily comprehend it all. He's bringing this as a proof that Chochmah can have Ein Sof in it, but not comprehend it all. It only comprehends the outer dimension. The mind only doesn't understand only a reflection of the neshama. Hainu aseichel v'amachshove shezeh musik. Hainu aseichel v'amachshove shezeh musik hamuhus. Ve'inu masik rak ha'olam mimenu. Let's read the next line, maybe. Hainu she'einu masikim muhus hakev l'rak shon yedim mitziyusei v'keich hamasku v'okaz shon rak. Twice. Not the Even Master like Oren and all. And the second
neshama is made up of 10 components.
One minute, so just give me a second. Oh, no, the Teichen I understand. The Neshama, even though it rests there, we don't understand. I'm trying to figure out the words here. So read Teichstadt.
Right.
You only have comprehension, only reflection, not the Muhus. Continue.
What is he masik? He's masik on the sechel machshava. Shazam musik abos.
Okay.
The neshama is made up of the sechel amidus, right? So that part he understands totally. That's muhus.
So the word shazam musik amahus was a little. So it should have said. Should have said. Okay, fine. But so the shazam musik amahus meaning in this, in seichel, the neshama he only understands a reflection. He only can't comprehend it. He only gets a reflection. In other words, not directly, not a direct understanding. What the hainus haseichel machshava shezeh musig amahus. That was the word was a little strange to me. So seichel machshava meaning the seichel itself and the thought. That seichel that you can understand because that he's experiencing. So this he understands it's mahu. What it is. No, if you talk about the keach, not the neshama, the faculty of seichel itself, we can comprehend not just that it exists. We don't just say there's seichel; we actually understand its personality, how seichel works, the mechanisms that work, and so on. No, but he's saying. Look what he's going to say. The Keich HaMaskil is not like the Keich HaSeichel. Listen.
Not Muhusa.
No, in other words, Kamoy is going on the Mitziyuse. But the Keich itself, like the Keich HaMaskil, we only know the Mitziyus. The Lashon is a little, In other words, it's going back and forth. So, what do we know? The Keich itself, the faculty of intelligence itself. One second. There we know Muhus, and not just the Mitziyus. Not like the Keich HaMaskil, means to say Leikamei. Not like the Keich HaMaskil, which is the root of, say, intelligence. With there, there we only sense. Like when you get an idea, you sense the idea came from somewhere. But what do you know about the place it came from? Nothing.
So the Keich HaMaskil is the Keich HaSeichel. It's the same, really.
No, it's not. It's not. It's the root, and it's what we don't know. One second. Hold on. We don't. Mashenkin, Keich HaSeichel, HaGoli. That which we, conscious wisdom, the ideas itself, we know its personality, how, and ma, and what it is. So we have basically here really three things. We have here the Keich HaSeichel, a faculty that you're aware of and conscious of, like in this case, intelligence. You don't just know it exists. It's not like for example, let's say we were not intelligent creatures, and someone told you there's an intelligent being there. So then it would be not muhus. No, but we have intelligence. Intelligence is a very big part of us, and we can relate to intelligence. We can understand its mechanism. We understand how eichuma. We understand its eichus and its muhus. Keich HaMaskil is the place where seichel comes from. So when you get an idea, you realize that idea didn't come from nowhere. There must be something that's generating intelligence. That we know the Mitzvah of. And similarly, even higher, I guess, is the Neshama. The Neshama, you know that it exists. So the Neshama rests in the mind. And that's the central nervous system. That's the place, that's where it rests, like he says in Tanya. But you don't comprehend it. You only know that it exists. You don't know its personality. That's essentially the point. With the Lashon, the Teichen, it was clear, but again, the key thing is to always remember when it comes to these things that the point here is you have to. It's breaking our inclinations and temptation to try to understand things on our terms. You see, we understand things that we can relate to. To introduce, and basically the interface, the role is to introduce us to things we don't relate to initially. But that doesn't mean we can't relate to it. You see? So the whole idea, you could even ask the question, why did God make mysteries of existence? Why didn't you just think everything understood? We can see it in our souls, we can see the secrets of all levels. Why are there secrets altogether? Why are things that are hidden? Just make everything easy to access. So good, of course, the answer is like the ditch of it. You need free will. There's a battle and a challenge. But it's deeper than that. That's the that's in other words. So in other words, it's a concealment in order for us to overcome it, to reveal it through our efforts. But there's another point here. It's an integration aspect. If as children, we're born, and we would download it into our brains, everything that we need to know, it would never be us. You'd never own it. It would be someone else pumping stuff into you. Imagine a child, there's just, you put a pipe in, a wire, a USB, and you download all the data and all the information. It would solve a lot of problems. We would have to deal with chinuch issues, schal limud, right? All the things all the corruption. Great. And actually that's the case. For the 9 months, you can have a pipe like that. It's called the Malam the Mexico, the Malach. Then the Alter Rebbe asked the question, so why do you make the child forget? What's the point of teaching the entire Torah to make him forget? It was just a game. And another question which she doesn't ask is obvious in Halacha, you're not even allowed to forget Torah. Here intentionally someone comes to make you forget. Answer he explains is that you don't really forget. It remains embedded in your genes, in your DNA, in your soul. And later, as you learn, you're revealing that which was there. So the question is, what's the point of the concealment? So besides the bechira part, to give us free will, the deeper aspect of it, because God wants us to be a partner with it. He wants us to own it. And if someone gave it to you, it would be a gift. It would not be you. You would not have created it, initiated it. So though it's in there, but embedded, it takes your work. And that makes it yours. The point of Dina B'Tachteinim is God doesn't want a home in this world. He wants a partner to build this home. That's why it's Tachteinim. The Chsol Atzmus, the desire, the Sava Kadosh Baruch Hu, that there should be a Tachteinim, a real Tachteinim. And then, besides the fact that our work should do it, but it should be integrated. Dina B'Tachteinim. That we would do Tachteinim on their level. So if your child, you downloaded it, then the download would be the power, whoever downloaded it. But you want the child to earn it. You want the child to say one day, I own this. I earned it. I worked on it. It became mine. And that can only be in the world that the way God created is through a process. There's no other way. There's no tricks. There's no express trains. There's no buttons to press. There's no magic pills. And that actually makes it part of who we are. It's fundamental piece. This is the yesod in the whole thing. So to go back here, that's the whole point. He wants the neshama us to access our neshama. But if he just revealed the neshama, and it's God revealing, it's not us coming to learn it. So we begin very tangibly. We relate to tables and chairs and people and food and anything that we can relate to with our 5 senses. But in our minds, there's also a neshama. There's also kayach hamasik. So our mind comes to understand there must be something that is generating, that's transmitting into me. I don't understand his personality, but I know it's there. And then as you grow, you begin to try to understand his personality. Complete Riyas, Mamish will be when we completely Nigla Kved Hashem, Ayin Bayin Yiro, will have a Sogas of Mahus. Just like today, we can comprehend a koyach, a revealed conscious faculty, or something that we can see. Today, that other is concealed. Through our working and refining our tools, we can come to also comprehend that Mamish HaSogas of Mahus. But that takes work, and that takes refining yourself. Nobody can give that to you as a gift. Because they give it to you as a gift, it's not yours. You didn't come to it. It's not like you understand what a neshama is. Yeah, you were told. Which again is not really a sogas hamahus in a way. Because a sogas hamahus means that you come to comprehend it as you comprehend things that are very tangible. So bottom line is in seichel, therefore, in meichen rather, the neshama rests, even though we don't understand its real personality. We know it's Messias. So right now, as we sit and think, your mind can understand that there's a life force inside of you. It's a common sense. You don't need any proof for that. There's a life force. Proof is that a person after 120 years, the life force is not there. Something's gone. The fact that we can, I don't want to quote him here because I don't know if it works here. I think, therefore I am. I wouldn't say it quite that way. I would say it the other way around. I think, therefore I can understand what I am. because my mind is working, I can understand that there's a life force, there's a soul inside me. You can speculate what's the soul like. You can realize the soul is not electricity, or you could extrapolate, or through a process of elimination, such as Dias Hashlila. But its personality is something that eludes us. But our minds understand. That alone tells you that Meichen, or that he puts it, that's in the human being. And Lamai the Chochma of Atzilus, which is Meichen of Atzilus, primary Meichen, is where the soul of Ein Sof rests. That's what he's saying here. So Chochma Gluya understands, like he said, Moshe Rabbeinu understands the back. I'll show you my back. The outer dimension. But Pulponai, the Pnimis of Chochma, its real personality, the Pnimis Atik, Ein Sof in it, the bleak full in it, you know it exists, but its Mahus is still not eludes you. Even Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what he's saying here. So therefore Chochma becomes the interface. Like Atzilus, Torah becomes the interface, because on one hand, in it rests the whole bleak full is there, but it's not revealed. But it's there. In Bina it's not there, because Bina is already a yesh, a keli. Chochma is being non-keli, it has the bittul to contain all of it. What is revealed right now is the outer dimensions. So it serves the interface both ways. It's a keli for the bleakful, and it's a beginning of extending into the structure. And think practically. A spark of an idea, of a concept, comes into you. It's no longer in the oblivion of bleakful. On the other hand, it's not yet developed in a structured way, you could say, but you have a spark. So that something has been ignited. Something has happened. A seed was born. A creation took place. And that point where Chochmah happens is where the Blikvul meets the Gvul in this context. Like I said, it's similar to where the Er HaBlikvul envisions the Er HaGvul, Shir Atzmi B'Kriyach, that point where they connect. So really the mind is the best Chabad, is the best tool to understand. Like I've said many times here, that's why it's such a focus. Torah, Chabad, what is it? That's the place where the Shekhinah rested. Where did the Shekhinah rest in the Mishkan? So there's the two opinions, right? Well, not the two opinions actually. The Rambam says the main thing of the Mishkan was the Karbonos. The Ramban says the main thing is the Aron. But everyone agrees that the Ashras HaShekhinah was the Aron. That's where Hashem spoke to Moshe. Why the Aron? Because the Aron is Chacham. The Aron is Torah. That's where Blikvul meets Gvul. Aron and Mokum Aron and Min Amida. It has both things. It has Mokum and Min Amida. That's where it meets. And then from there it reaches outward. You heard the voice in the Pesach HaElmei. But it's from the Kaperis, B'Shnei Badei Aron, as he said. Tzimtzum Asmin B'Shnei Badei Aron. He put himself there like the small mirror that we discussed earlier. Okay.
Where do you see where do you get the Mohus? I didn't quite follow that. Where is the Mohus?
Mashiach comes.
I thought he said in some places we get the Mohus.
No, things that we can relate to. You could see things we can physically relate to. You can relate to the koyach. You can't relate to the source of it.
That's the Mohus.
No, that's the Mohus we can relate to. It's not the real Mohus of what we have. You can open up a clock and know it's Mohus. Because a clock is tangible. You can open up a clock and look at all its gears, manipulate it. What we all do with science and technology.
That's how we define Mohus.
No, that's not how we define Mohus. Mohus always means the core personality of something.
Yeah.
We only relate to the core personality of tangible things. We don't relate to the core personality of spiritual things.
You can open up a thermometer and
soul.
mercury.
Okay, so that's
We don't relate to the core personality of the soul. We can extrapolate. We can try to figure it out. It's very simple. The soul itself. What is the soul like? We don't know what's Mohus.
sounds like we can point to and say, that's a Mohus.
Yeah. Exactly.
Seichel is part of it.
Koyach HaSeichel, Golik. Seichel Golik. Yeah.
Seichel.
Well, I mean, Koyach hasn't, we said, Mohus Koyach.
The faculty of Seichel.
Yeah, the faculty, yeah. But Mokan HaSeichel, like you said, Koyach HaMaskil, not. Between Koyach HaMaskil and Koyach HaSeichel. That's why we can do things about. Koyach HaSeichel, we know the process. We know how it works. Being the Das, there's a process. We can relate to it and so on. And we want to cut to the real chase. What we really understand the faculty of Chachma. Of course, there's elements that are beyond us, but generally, there is an aspect that we do relate to.
Psychiatrists study this all.
Yeah, but Okay. Now he continues in the parentheses. This is going to, by the way, he's going to answer this, what you're asking now. He's going to say, qualify this. Even though we just said that the Koyach, he actually knows something about his personality, like that. Whereas with the soul, or the Koyach HaMaskil, we don't know really what it's like, we only know that it's there. So he says, Rak, it's qualified. However, Rak only qualification. Close idea hanushis, in general, human comprehension, human knowledge, Hirak ideas on the Tziyas L'Pam. So he's making a major qualification. In general, we only know Metzias. We only know the existence of things. Because we don't really comprehend. We don't comprehend the spiritual personality of something. Comprehend. Now he's going to qualify. So what then is the difference? With this point, we're back to square one. What's the difference then the way we understand the conscious faculty and the way we understand Koyach HaMaskil or the Neshama? See, this is what he qualifies. But the knowledge of the existence of intelligence, we don't just know someone told us like a story that it exists somewhere. We also know, rather we know, what type of eichu mitziyusi. How is it? Eich. How does it exist? In an actual, complete, and literal comprehension. But the makar of seichel, which we don't have direct access to, where the seichel came from, that we don't have a soga mamish. Well, the Maila, like it says elsewhere, the Maila in a soga sambush mamish. What does that mean? The Maila. Eichel mitzvah b'chinas hasoga mamish. Well, the Maila in a soga sambush mamish. You can touch it two ways. The Maila, they do have a soga sambush mamish. That's not what he's saying. No. I think the Maila, this makar haseichel, the Maila is a soga sambush mamish. That's what.
Which we can't tap into.
Because this was a mashal. The mashal is the makar haseichel. We don't comprehend. So what is the Maila, the nimshal, the moral? And that's soga sambush mamish. Another course, poneh, not achayre. That's what he means. Let me just explain this with an example. When we have water coming out of our faucets, so in general, human knowledge, as he said, doesn't understand the inner personality of anything real, inner spiritual personality. So someone saying, what is water? Okay, well today we dissect what water is, H2O, and we can break it down, and we can emulate it, and we can do a lot. Manipulating its molecules and so on, even its atoms. But the water tells us that the water is coming from somewhere. Where's it coming from? It's coming from pipes that run to a reservoir. The reservoir collects water from the rain. All that is something which is something we can comprehend. We comprehend it even in a way that it's tangible. You can analyze it, you can relate to it, you can see it, etc. But if someone tells you, actually my example was going to be that the reservoir is, we know Metzias, we know what it is. We don't know what it's like, we don't know how big it is. Is it this big, that big? What's really going on there? We don't really know. So you know that it exists. So the water that you have in your cup, you can actually tangibly touch and analyze and relate to. It's still relatively Yedias Metzias, but in the Yedias Metzias, like he says, we don't just know it exists, we also know Eichu Metzias B'chinas Hasoga Mamish. When you go to the source of where it's coming from, what do you know? The reservoirs are hundreds of miles away upstate New York. I'll just give you an example. Obviously, you could say I could travel there and you can see that. That goes without saying. But let's say that now let's go back and where does the water come from? The rain. Where does rain come from? That's already more complicated. So rain is a combination of the vapor that comes from the oceans, that gathers in the clouds, and then you get to how does the oceans turn into vapor. I'm trying to point out that there's things that you could, even with seas, there's things you can actually analyze and replicate. Science has done so. But there comes a point where you simply just know it exists and you can't talk much about it. You don't know what it's like. There's always a point like that. That's what he's trying to distinguish. It's not just, even though human knowledge is limited in we don't understand spiritual energy But nevertheless, there are things we do understand, and as he says, we know the Metzias, and we can know what type of existence it is. And the best proof is that we can do something about it. For example, they could today there's ways to cause, they can even cause rain to fall. I don't know if they can do that, but they definitely can replicate certain things. I don't know if they can do it in the place.
Unless it's a relative term, we don't know the mahus of anything, unless using it as a relative term.
It is a relative, but that doesn't mean that we don't, like he says, Seichel itself, we don't just know it exists. The point is, we can do something about it. We don't just know our intelligence exists. We also know what type of existence it is, a real comprehension of it. But Makra Seichel, where it comes from, what does the Koyach HaMaskal look like? That is something that we don't have a comprehension. Okay. So all this is coming to establish that the mind, the soul rests in the mind, right? At the same time, it's not understood. The soul is not understood by the mind. Only it's conceived, that exists. So go back to before the parenthesis. But the neshama, on the other hand, that rests in the mind, in the head, it's not comprehended, even though it rests there, dwells there. All this is a mashal. Remember, he said, "Kamei al-derech mashal." Going back now to Moshe. Similar to this, who behev l'havdolas l'ein ketz, we say l'havnu elef havdolas. So he says behev l'havdolas l'ein ketz more than elef. Separating it by infinite separations. Just the expression. In other words, this example, infinitely more so, shegam chinas ha'chochmi Allah. Same thing, chochmi Allah of Atzilus. The higher chochmi Atzilus. Ima yesh ein sof l'bizbah. Like here, just like the neshama rest of it doesn't comprehend, and the seichel doesn't comprehend, even though Ein Sof is manifest there, like he says in Tanya Perikon and Hay, like he brought from the Zohar, Shari Shintu Shari al Reishe, Ein Chochem Ein Bereishe. The feel of Primis Atikemu Primis Abba, and he goes even more. And even the inner dimension of Atikemu, which is the highest level that we can touch. Can't touch, but the highest level is Primis Abba, is the inner dimension of Chochmah. L'kol mokim, so rest there. Einam Mizgala Mohuz B'Chinas Chochmah. The inner personality is not revealed in Chochmah. Rak B'Chinas Chetzenis Levad. Rak B'Chinas Chetzenis Levad, I should say. Only from its outer dimension.
But in the case of Chochmah, there's the interface that has both. This is not revealed.
Correct. Well, not revealed. Something is revealed, but not the inner. Yeah, there is shaded. Remember, Hashara is Gili, not Mohus. It's explaining basically there's Mohus, there's Gili HaMetzias, and then there's the lower levels.
This line is a very key line. Hashara, who Gamkin is Galas, Akshin is Galas Mamish, because Gili Mohus.
Yeah, key line.
Very key line.
Yeah, that's the whole point of departure. Yeah. Remember, the whole thing started. Why does it say the word Hashara? Well, this is explaining Hashara. Yeah. Look, it's as I said, it's a dance. It's a very delicate balance that you have to keep. Look, like it's known, the Abba Yenik, the Mazla, Chinesayt is the Arechan Pinubah. Abba Yenik, Abba suckles. What do we say, Yenik? Nurtures, huh? Yenik. Derives, but it's a Yenik it usually refers to a very narrow nurses. The Mazla, Chinesayt is the Arechan. The Mazel, we learned this as well. Remember we talked about Cyrus as opposed to Caleb or Asius, Cyrus and Asius. It was the beginning of the Holy Yisrael Samba
Kuflamer Aleph or something.
That's another place. That's talking about closer home. Right here.
What is he saying? Kesef means cut.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, but in a way of Cyrus, in a way
Yeah,
of, like in other words, it's trying to explain that it's not,
not a big cut.
it's only Chitzenius.
Oh, yeah, we have
It's like the hairs that come out of the, yeah, you know what it was? It was, when he started speaking the difference between,
Atzilus l'tzarech atzon and tzarech.
right, exactly, right there. Let's want to see a second. On the left side,
it's interesting challenging some.
no, it's not challenging. I want to see because sometimes something's said there. Yeah, here, Peter Kuf Mem Hey. And then there's one place earlier, you're right. Sure, much earlier, the Mem. It says, so here you do it, right there. It says, L'pam Nikam Shalom B'Shem Cyrus. Cyrus the Zohar, Nasa Meichel L'Mufva. He never went back to Cyrus. Did he ever move that back? I think once he moved there. There was another place where he said a siren, remember, that you can pull it to feel pain. When you cut it, you don't. It shows a very small unit. You know where it was? The end of a minor. With Avram Zok. The hair there. Remember the hairs? That was called Til Avram Moya Yezikna.
Right.
That was earlier. That was a lot earlier.
That's in
No. It has to be later. I remember it, and I only start by Kuf Zayin.
Did you start by Kuf Zayin?
Yeah, but it was later than that.
I know exactly what it was. I think it's Chai Soda Minor. Is it Chai Soda Minor? I'm just looking for a point of reference here. Chai Soda, maybe not. Maybe Chai Soda. From Zok and Baba Yom. Look at the bottom at the end of the From Zok. Page Kuf Tzadik. No, that was one place. No.
So it's a little bit later.
It's with the Ovis. It was connected to the Ovis, right?
But the others went much further.
No, not the first time. Maybe the Ovis with Yaakov.
That over there, it's by Yaakov.
Yeah, that area.
Zikna was Chachma, no?
Okay, you know what? Let's move on. I thought it may be relevant.
Zikni was out of me. That he is so stubborn.
Maybe it was later with the Ovis. Okay. So bottom line is Chochmah is Yenik from Mazola. It's cited on Hamad. Sheniklu b'shem Acheirai. That's called Acheirai. That's what means Release Acheirai. That he saw it back. Because Chochmah was only able to Chochmah, which is Moshe, is only able to glean and glean and sip.
Sorry.
Sip is also maybe a good word to sip. Because it's like a very narrow flow. Behind the Chitzenius HaChochmah, which means that the level of the outer dimension of Chochmah, Shabbat, is that B'chinis Islapshus, B'chinis Gilumam, B'chinis Chitzenius HaKesef. That which comes in a state of clothing and actual and total revelation is only Chitzenius HaChochmah. HaKesef, rather. The outer dimension of Kesef. B'chinis Pnimius HaKesef, B'chinis Hashra, Levat She'enu Musag and Malus. And Pnimis HaKesef is only in a state of dwelling. That's not comprehending the core personality. So he's adding now the Hashra. So Islapshus is this a Chochmah too. Remember we learned that Islapshus has, there's Islapshus and Hashra. Islapshus is completely revealed, completely enclosed.
So he has both of them.
So yes, he says Islapshus Mamish is Kachenius Keser comes completely enclosed in the Eretz Bekalim in Chacham. And Pneumius remains Shayla. Eid Ein Sof is Shayla. The infinite divine light is only dwells there. So there's partial revelation, but it's not in the form of Mohus. That's the key. He didn't say that specifically before.
But how do you say Makib? How do you say that with
It's not
Or Ein
Makib,
Sof?
it's not
But
Makib.
Or Ein Sof itself, Or Ein Sof is not a Makib in
Not in Chachma. In Chachma, it's there, it's in the Pnimi. It's just not revealed. That's the whole point here. Chachma. It's Makif compared to other levels. He says, Chachma is Bittel. Because of Bittel, it's a Keli. As soon as you have a Keli, it's a whole different story. Bittel, the Keli is the Bittel. Still looking for it?
I think he uses the Shir Atzma, he uses the same word as Shir Saya.
No, I'm not sure.
Same Lashon.
Do you remember such an expression? I don't think so. Maybe if you find something like that. What you're still looking for Adam Ramla and Ezekiel.
I don't think I find it. Looking for
I'll find it later. I just don't want to waste time. Yeah, you find it. Okay. So now we have. So it's all still continuing the concept of Ashra. See, so there is a slapshus. But it goes back to what he said about the top of Shem Chavot. It's not Makif. It's actually anything is Gili. Continuing on. There we go. Slapshus is a Chetzenska. Primus Keser Prince Ashro Vash Ena Muslim Muslim. Zeki and Abiyeh Mit Mamazlo. And that's the meaning that Abba, Chochma, suckles, nurses from Mazel, and Mevchinas Primus Keser.
He just said, yeah,
You said Chatzanis a minute ago.
for Laita.
You said Chatzanis in the life.
What did you say now?
We did not like Yodik with Muscle, they was Cyrus there, Pat, and love. It's not like Yodik with Muscle, I think it's Bruce and Kessel.
So,
Seems like it's also lovely.
let's read Yosinus. Abba Yenik Mamad, and Mevchinas Primus Keser. Because from Arich Hampin, from Chetzenis Keser, it gets a slapshus. It's not like Cyrus. Yeah, Abba Yenik Mamazla. The sides of Arich through the sides of Arich Hampin into Yenik from the Mazel of Primus Keser. That's the meaning. Let's read. You'll see in a second. It says elsewhere, "Hefrik Masha Abba V'Ima Malbishul L'Zrei is the Arich Hampin." The difference with Chachma and Bina, Malbishim, they are like garments.
Here it says that the Slapshus brings Hatik, but I can't be that. I think it was a tension makes it Slapshus Malish, Relation Makan, and so on.
Brings about Zikra there.
He's talking about that Shpah, it's a spirit in his
So it says elsewhere, we have like this. Abba V'Ima Malbishim. Remember like this. Chacham and Bina are enclosed, Zroyes, the arms. Zroyes arm. Of Arichan. So Chacham and Bina, Zroyes Arichan, and Arichan remembers a parzuf. Think of it like a structure and a body. So there's arms of Arichan, spears in Arichan, and it says in Eitz Chaim probably that Abba V'Ima Malbishim, they are like the garments. Think of it like sleeves. The garments you put on those arms of Arichampin, Malbishim. And then that difference between that, and then it says, Masha'aba v'ima yenik b'mazla. Then it says, Chachma Bina are yenik. Unika and Islapshus are not the same thing. Islapshus is garments. You're totally dressing up that level. That level is completely, rather, I would say, enclosed in you. So when someone is yenik, you can't say that the level is enclothing itself inside of the person, the thing that is gleaning, suckling. Halvasha is complete manifestation. So seemingly there's a contradiction. One is
You can't do both, you're saying.
and the answer, so it's explained to us, but what is the difference between, not that it can't do both, it's two different types of experiences. One is in clothing, which means it's far more of a previous. It's like a seich geir, a keli in a way. And the other is only a unika. It's only coming from a very small trickle.
One is like a creation, one's like an energizing, slightly.
I don't know what that means. The B'china Zayin Tachtein is that, so the difference is the B'china Zayin Tachtein is that Arichampin, from the 7 lower dimensions of Arichampin, the 7 lower spheres, Bob B'china Sislapshus Mamish Ba'aba V'hima. The 7 lower spheres of Arichampin come completely manifest in Chachma Bina. Amazol Hashem B'chinas Meichus Dima, and the Mazolos, which usually mean the Mazolos are the signs, but Mazel here is like from the word Mazlin in Lebanon, like it's a Mazel is it's a distant source. Mazel. Hashem B'chinas Meichus Dima. Meichus Dima is not designed. Dein Tachtein is the middest of Arich, from Chesed through Malchus. The Meichus Dima, the hidden intelligence, the unconscious wisdom, mind of Arich, Shavai Malubish B'chinas Atik. In it manifests and encloses Atik, encloses again Malubish. There, that cannot come down in a form of Islapshus. The transmission from there into Chachma Bina is in a state of like strands of hairs. And only a unique levad, only a trickle, only a very narrow flow, and a very very like unique. Very unique is just a drop, drops. Narrow flow. I must have possible could tell about beer the Bahamif. Look at the tail and the beard of him, which is explained in seconds. Okay. So what do we have? Let's just make sure this little Kabbalistic piece, let's decipher it. It's obviously the levels, but he's saying till now. So everything we learned before the Mashal, Chassidus, you see, without Chassidus, this whole piece and this Kabbalistic piece would be impossible to understand. Basically, the understanding of this is the following. The neshama rests in the mind. The mind is able to comprehend intelligence. But what could it do with the makar hasechel or with the neshama? It only has a unique of mazolos. That's what it means simply. So it's basically an explanation. The explanation he gave, the example of Havdalah, what he called the Havdalah Havdalah Slaying Ketz, is the same thing. Chachmei La is a keli for Ein Sof. But when it's Mislapshus is only the lower dimensions of Arich, manifest in Chachma in a revealed way. You can relate to it. Like we can relate to a faculty of intelligence within us. But the Neshama within Chachma, the Ein Sof within Chachma, the 3 higher, the Meichus Tema of Arich Hampin, which manifests Atik, Pnimis HaKeser, that only comes in a form of Yediyas HaMetzias. We only know it exists, but we don't have any comprehension of its personality. That in Lashon of Kabbalah is called Unika and Cyrus. So decipher, forget about Unika and Cyrus, just think of it in terms of that's the Kabbalistic term for a diminished flow where you're only getting, that you know that it exists, but you don't know what it's like. An example, Taka Unika. A child knows, even from birth to suckle, he knows it needs to nurse, and it knows how to nurse, it doesn't need to be trained. So what does it know consciously about its mother? Not much. It just knows its source of sustenance. Later, a child will grow up and realize this is my mother, this is my father, this is people. Begin to understand there's a personality here. So the unique, I'm just using it as an example, that you could know that all you know in unique is that there's something that you need, and you get it. You have no comprehension of its inner personality as a child one day will have when it grows up and begins to comprehend. Just another example, just many examples that basically you know something exists but you don't know what it's like, what's really behind it.
It's not from our, the Yanika doesn't come from our
Found it.
company, it comes from us, right?
I found the Cyrus.
Mazola.
One second, Abigenik Mazola. Recited Al-Kham.
Yeah, but
It's basically, an Abigenik Mazola, it's linked from Mazola. He said the Mazolas are in Mechus Timah, and there Atik is manifest. So Primis HaKeser,
the Attic or Arak, what does that mean?
I don't
It's
know,
they're
yes.
both. With it.
what's Reza?
The unique comes from Arak or Attic before when you said when it comes from
The 7 lower levels of Arich is not Unika, it's Slapshus.
Right.
The 3 higher levels of Arich, Mechus Timah, Chabad of Arich,
Right.
where Atik rests, Atik manifests there. That's where the Unika comes from. And it comes in the form of here.
Mazola, right?
Yeah.
It's a third level, Mazolas.
That's the Mazolas. There's
That's
Mechus
the
So
Timah.
it's three things here.
Where's the third?
It's the Arctic.
Atik rests in those Mazolas.
In Meichels tomorrow.
Yeah, that's it.
What is
No,
the
but Atik rests in Meichus Timah. That's
Okay,
where Atik
sure.
rests. That's what he says in the Mazolas. Reread his words.
Mazolas and Meichels tomorrow is the same thing.
That's what he says.
Because I said it's like another like
Look,
step.
Mazolas shehem b'chinas Meichus Timah.
Penis.
Mazolas. It's not. Meichus is not only Mazolas, but Mazolas are from the level of Meichus Timah. The Lum b'chinas Atik. That's where Atik is. Misham Amshach is in the form of Sidus and Unika.
So actually, why do we use this word Mazolas if we can talk about Meichels tomorrow? Like levels in Meichels tomorrow?
We're talking about Chachma Bina is Yenik. Meichus Timah is not Yenik.
No, from.
Chachma Bina Gola.
Are yearning from.
Yeah, from. Yeah, that's what he says.
A gully, you say.
We're talking about there's 2 statements. Chachma and Bina. One place says they enclose the arms of Arich. Another place says that they suckle from the Mazola to the Cyrus of Arichampin. So Arichampin is a structure. Think of it like a body.
Wow.
The arms of Arich are in Chachma Bina in a revealed way. The Cyrus of Arich, the beard, is the Mazolas of Arich. That only comes in a very small trickle.
Okay. So the
That's a higher level of Arich. Simple as that.
It's
very simple. Look. If you bend down and carry your child, your arms carry your child, but your face and your mind and your beard, which all represents that part, the child only has a touch of it. They don't really comprehend it, even though you're holding the child. Remember, in Kabbalah, everything is structured around human beings. It's Tzelem Elokim. So you have to think of the body as being basically like metaphors. Examples for different types of hashpahs. So here is a hashpah in a very thin strand. Meichin is a hashpah that's revealed. Remember later we'll learn metzach, forehead, eyes. They got to get used to the language. That's why learning Kabbalah, someone said it right, that people are megashim because Kabbalah speaks in very, very physical terms, in yichudim and so on. It's really the other way around. It's the human being was created in the divine image. So everything in the human structure is a divine element. That's why.
With a muscle.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to think of hair. It didn't begin with hair. It began with a thin strand of flow of energy. That looks like a hair in this world. Understand? The problem is we're so magushim. When you hear hair, you say, "What hair? What beard? Here, Cyrus, Mazolas." That's why the Chassidus is. That's why take the muscle first, and then you'll understand. I think that's what Marash said. People think Kabbalah, Chassidus is a beer in Kabbalah. The truth is, Kabbalah is a beer in Chassidus. Chassidus talks with Mahus, like you just said. The soul in your mind. That's like previous. That's like the higher levels of Arich. Now remember, Arich and Atik work the same way as Arich works with Chachma. Just like Arich has a Chachenis in a previous, so does Chachma. Chachma's Chachenis Chachma is basically manifesting Arich. Pnimius Chachma has an access to Pnimius Atik, but in a very distant way. That's
So the second comes through, Atik comes through our to the Chachma.
the key is to think of it in terms that you can relate to, which is usually teacher-student Any transmission you relate to, think of the transmission that is. You can relate to the transmission, you can access it, or does it remain elusive? So think of a great teacher that teaches you something. So there are things you understand, the things you realize there's something there, but I don't fully get it yet. So really that's what it comes down to. That's why you have to make it very palatable. Not that complicated if you think about it. It gets complicated because you're trying to figure out the word Cyrus and so on, but all this is a motion. It's an example for levels. It takes time, but once at some point you start realizing every time you see the word arm or hair, it no longer comes arm and hair, it's just different dimensions of revelation. Remember, the arms relate to the midas. It's really saying the midas of Arich manifest in the Chachma of Atzilus. That's what you're really saying. Whereas the Chmeichin of Arich is a teacher that's beyond. And I know something's there, but it's beyond me. And the only thing I get is a strand, is a thin flow. That's, if you want a real simple English.
Just this one alone.
Yeah. But the key is, that's what I'm saying. You think it's complicated. It's not so complicated. The levels. What's complicated is to understand what does it mean that we don't really get Muhus. What tak is that level? That's what we should really be focusing on. But the Rebbe Rashab is speaking, advanced level. He's bringing the Kabbalah. He wants to ground it all. It's beautiful, actually. When you think of it, the whole piece in its time is really an explanation of the interface. Without Chassidus, you'd never know what's this whole role of the Zreyus and the Sidus and so on. But cut through those words. Just get to the point of trying to find an interface here that decreases as it goes downward, but does not compromise. It still retains what's above. That's what you need. That's the key. In any interface, the problem will be either the flow from the source is weakened, or it's not reaching. Let's say think of a translator who knows between Hebrew and English. So he knows Hebrew well, and doesn't know English. But he knows English well and doesn't know Hebrew. It's going to be a problem. A pipe has to be very seamless. It takes the source and assimilates it, prepares it to be able to pass on, and all done in a very balanced way. If there's too much of anything going on, the interface ceases to function properly. An imbalance would be either too much flowing from the source, too little going to the destination, or some other type of distortion that takes place. That's why we said that meticulous precision that the Rebbe Rashab uses to basically go through every switch, every connection, step by step by step. Basically, like when you go with someone, a mechanic comes to troubleshoot, you have to go through every connection, right? They go through every connection, go through every possible connection, because can't miss one. You miss one, and it can be a big problem. You ever see when heart surgery is done? So then the assistants are telling the surgeon, they literally go through 10, 15 times with everything connected, because there's millions of things to connect. I don't know millions, but there's so many that if you miss one, it's not going to be good. Okay. We could say that this is like the nigla detailer, shemusig mahus mamash. In nigla, when you learn halacha, when you learn Gemara, shemusig mahus mamash, the actual personality of the thing you're learning is completely comprehensible.
It's gashness.
Right? Like you say, Reuven gave Shimon a loan. Shimon did this. You're dealing with things that you relate to every day. Mahus mamash. We're not talking about mahus of chachmei law, what's God's wisdom. Mahus we mean, on our world, this is a mahus. Like you said before, everything is ideas, but Tzanush in truth it's not the deepest, but we can relate to it. Like someone, I remember years ago,
Concreteness.
there was someone who he yeshiva with me, and he said, I can't relate to Chassidus at all. Nicholas, he understands. This is a ganav. He can relate to, because everything is tangible. Isser, Heter, everything is tangible. So this is all abstract.
It's supposed to be.
So I asked him if he likes music. Yeah. I was shocked when he told me no. I never met someone who doesn't like music. Guy that's happened to not like music. Any music. He said, you don't like music. Anyway, music is a perfect example. Music is not so tangible, yet you like it.
I don't like it.
You don't like music?
Sometimes.
A nice niggin?
I only nigga, but only a nigga. There are
It's
few
fine,
things I
so
like.
that's certain type of music. Fine.
And I don't go nuts over it usually. I don't like it. Just totally. I wish I could. I can't.
But then you gotta know what it says Chassidus about
You have to almost
Chassidus
time.
and
You have
music.
to almost time.
No, it talks about Chush Chassidus.
No, I know.
Not to know how to sing, not talking about the voice. There's some Chassidim who were unbelievable Ergish music. They didn't know how to sing. Singing is an instrument aspect. You know, someone can be, God forbid, mute and they learn music.
Although, you know, in Oklahoma, I enjoyed it. So maybe this absence makes the October.
You know, tefillah and music is all connected. Maybe if you started listening to some Siddish melodies, learning nine bass.
That was part of the reason I became Chabad, because of the simple little Lipsker songs, number 6, number 2, number 8.
Some people say you don't like music. What are you talking about? Do you like it? Just put it in there.
I'm very selective, maybe. I don't know.
Which one? Rebels?
No, I listen all day long. I love it.
So then Migdal Tebus, Mashengu, Primis Ateh, the Shemus of Raka Metzias Levad. In contrast, in and Torah, only the Metzias. You talk about things in the Seder Shpashos, we only know that it exists. But Kamashikosa Babir de V'lei Tajbis, like explains in the explanation of V'lei Tajbis, also the Kuta Torah. Tajbis Melech. It's a whole beautiful explanation there between Migdal and Primis.
This bothers me also. We only know that they exist. How do we know they exist? Because we're reading about it here.
That's it.
So how do you know what the Gemara says is right? It's also reading.
But you can relate to it concretely.
No, it's laws. I'm talking about the halach.
But you can relate to it
That's
concretely.
exactly if someone stole from this and this, so you say that Allah is like this, but the actual scenario, we can relate. We see it right here. This is, we're talking about a
Well,
whole.
let me ask you something. Chumash. About Chumash. How do you know Chumash?
Which is also tangent.
Relatively,
What do you mean?
Where's the Gemara? It's not.
Chumash is we were told. That's what happens.
No,
So about the Sippurim.
He's supposed to cut the week.
Spirits, the Sippurim of Chumash. The whole history of Chumash. Everything that happened.
It's a history. It's passed on from one generation to
No, but
generation.
the things that are pretty fantastic. How do you so what's it?
This is a whole.
I asked you a question.
This
But
is
so
all-
why? What? No. Chile says Eshes Spirits. You're asking a question.
Yeah.
When the Taylor says Kriyas Yamsuf happened, you know
Right,
about it.
600,000 people experienced it.
That's the reason that's no problem for you.
That's no problem.
Maybe 600,000 people experienced Eshes Spirits.
They're out there.
It was passed on by the same people that tell us about Kriyas Yamsuf. So if they're believable, they're believable.
Yeah,
It's
explainable.
You're not one of the 600,000. You believe it.
Experience Atzma saying so.
That's what I'm saying. You believe that that's what happened.
They're just like, I know George Washington lived because they
Okay, so the same people told us about Esses Spirits.
same people, 600,000.
You mean number? It's a number issue.
No, 600,000.
The people who learned Torah, passed on Torah.
No, but the word is that
You tell me.
I made a
So,
statement. Made a statement.
No, no,
I educated them and see this.
no. I have a problem with what you're saying. Fundamental problem. You're basically eliminating Moshe as a Navi.
Not at all.
What do you mean? He came down. There were no 600,000 people. He came down. He
Yeah,
told them, God told me something.
That's not true. They all experienced manipulated. They also they should have been. No, we get it.
What they
The
see.
Rambam says it
What
clearly.
they see.
The Rambam says we don't believe
What they
Moshe
saw.
Rabbeinu that he's an oven because he showed us up. Because 600,000 people witnessed it. That's why we're
And
not
that's
seeing
your question. Hundreds of things that Moshe
The
Rabbeinu.
guy Mechayim
When Moshe went to speak to God,
The guy Mechayim Learned that this is brought out everywhere. And everything that he said before, we know it's true because we experienced
and
it.
one of the things he said was Esses Spirits. So, just like Teresh Shalom. He said the Esses Spirits. He told us he came from God and told us there's Esses Spirits. Where do you think it comes from? No one thought of it. Moshe heard it from the Eibishter. So why, if he heard other things?
Sometimes I think it's like a fantastic theory.
No, but I just asked you something. Why suddenly do you divide the
It's a
Torah?
fantastic theory.
No, answer my question. But you can't make a statement like that. You're accepting only some things he said and some things not.
That's from like something.
No, I'm asking you a
Made a
question.
statement said only Yedim says.
So I asked you a question. The same thing.
Most people one can't relate to that sentence.
No, but you're not having a conversation with me.
It's like a passion.
All the nevuahs that he said was we know the Metzias. We believe that that's what do we know? That's what he told
We
us.
can accept that with the Mahus concretely.
He told
But
us.
to
What's that?
understand it, the
He said that
understanding
this.
of them.
What are we talking about?
what's
To me, to split this, to me, he said this food is kosher, this food is not
Right.
kosher. He heard that from God.
That's
He didn't figure it out.
That's level of
He
Mahus.
said there's 10 spirits. The same
Fine.
person said both.
Fine.
Why are you accepting one, not the other?
He
Both
really
things
does.
he
He accepts that he said that. So he doesn't
Right.
accept the knowledge behind it. That's already.
That's not what he's saying. He's asking me, how do we know it exists? Because someone told
You're
us.
saying this
How
is
do-
kosher and this is not kosher. So we see this and we see this thing. And
we don't see nothing. We don't see that as kosher.
Yeah, but we see this.
No.
We see this now they hear that this is kosher, this is not kosher. Here with the whole thing is
The same.
the whole thing of Esesphiris is not. You're not saying the whole thing of Esesphiris.
I don't understand the
We
difference.
can't relate to it because it's not tangible.
In Chumash it says, "B'shmi Havaya le'nedaiti lehem." Is that tangible? Havaya was not revealed, and Shaddai was. Is that tangible? That's a pasuk in Chumash. Is that tangible? That tangible. And spheres, that's spheres.
Right.
Okay, so what do you want? It has to be an animal?
I
I'm saying, well, no, the same Navi
Right.
that you believe in, that told us something is kosher, something is not kosher, told us there's 10 spheres. I actually have far more easy for me to accept the 10 spheres than the kashrus. Kashrus, it's like, it's completely not safe. Spheres makes sense. God wants to have a relationship with us, so He created a whole system to have a relationship.
It makes
The
sense.
kashrus is a complete chok. It's a rational, it's a super rational law.
Yeah.
I'm saying, if you really ask me,
Right, you go into it, yeah.
now you're just saying because you see an animal,
The fact of it.
you don't see its kashrus, you see the animal. I'm talking about the laws of Torah. The Torah doesn't tell us it's an animal. That's not what we're talking about. The Torah is telling us these are the laws. Nigla, what he's saying, Nigla is tangible.
And it does see an animal that has these simanim, then it's kosher.
Right?
Yeah,
Just
this
ask you,
whole thing is built-
but
this
that
whole thing is
statement
built-
that it's kosher
Yeah.
is as irrational as anything.
Fine. So
Most means
it's the
comfort
statement that
zone.
This animal that has these simanim is kosher or not. This is
And Shmi Havayla Nedakta Lehem is what? Tell me that's a pasuk also, just like a pasuk kosher. Shmi Havayla Nedakta. Tell me how you explain that.
it's very simple. God told Moshe, I didn't reveal my inner core.
What is in the core? I can't touch that.
We just
No, but what's saying? Well, why is that different than spheres? That's spheres.
it's a very rational statement. Spheris, not spheris.
And the level of the
Everything that goes
statement,
on,
not the
everything that
level
goes
of
on,
what
the
it
Maila
means.
and the logistic away. It says,
The same Navi told us what's going on down here. Told us.
Everything that goes on in the Maila and the logistic away, it says on the Yodim Mitzvahs.
Because we know the Mitzvahs of halachas too. It's the same thing.
We believe it, but it says like a given. It's like on the Yodim
It's
Mitzvahs.
the given that you believe in kashrus. You just happen to be used to kashrus. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's it.
The laws of kashrus have nothing to do
You're
with
comfortable
saying.
with it.
Right, exactly.
Because you're comfortable with it.
That's what it comes down to with us. When it's,
And what happens if someone told you at a young age, that's a spheres, and they forgot to tell you kashrus, then that would
Then
be
it's going to be more, yeah.
Well, anyway, to me, I know, to me, a gleich seichel is very simple. The things that were told to us are completely because we only know that someone told it to us, the existence of it, that's all we know. What he's saying here, Nigla does, Nigla you also understand, because you're dealing with material matters. So you can work with material things. In the spheres, you don't have the same tangible element. That's the difference. But the facts of it, I don't see the difference. What's the difference in the facts? The facts you have to accept that that's what was said. That's what was taught. I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu, Halach L'Moshe in Sinai, that Bar Mitzvah is at age 13. Could have been 14, could have been 12. That's what it was said. I'm talking about, you see, now you're saying that these mitzvahs, but who tells us the mitzvahs? That's the question. He didn't ask the question whether they understand it. He says, who tells us the mitzvahs? I'm saying the same one who told us the mitzvahs of everything else. No real difference. There is Shabbat Peh. That was one of the big things. People think Zohar, Kabbalah came later. It didn't. If it came later, it's worthless. It was either given as Sinai or was not given as Sinai. It's either Torah or not Torah. It's amazing. But you're saying, I know that's why I'm so passionate, because there are people who say that. They think Kabbalah Chassidus came later. It has something to do with Sinai. If you say that, then I won't be learning this.
even Echidus is from Sinai.
So once you accept everything that's from Sinai, the difference, however, is a big difference between Nigla and Pnimius. What you're learning. With Nigla, it manifests in things that you can deal with on a daily basis, things that are tangible, basically. So someone says two people are shutfim, partners, business, or they share a wall, or they're neighbors, whatever it may be. They have a disagreement. So this is a thing that happens every day. So you study Torah, and Torah tells you can tangibly relate it. Obviously, there's an element even in Nigla that is godly and can remain beyond our total logic. But most of it is something you can work with. In spheres, all you have that you're told that it exists. You don't have any so-called material, tangible way to test it, tangible way to manifest it. That's what he's saying here. But I was talking about the Kabbalah of it, that they're both coming from from heaven, you know. But for sure, for example, to understand that God said, "Do not steal," is far easier than understanding the Torah Duma.
It's called the Mishpat in the Torah.
But that doesn't mean, as we know, that doesn't mean it's not as much divine. It just means one manifested something we can relate to. We could have come up with it ourselves. We could have come up our own, and we shouldn't steal from each other.
Ultimately, a Mishpat has the same unknowingness like a Chol.
Ultimately, yeah. But there's a difference in Mislapshus.
Yeah.
One does Mislapish in a way that you don't need a lot of arguments about.
That's right.
The other one remains something that's completely based on faith or on the logic of understanding something that's spiritual.
So it's a theory.
I don't know what theory means. What isn't a theory?
Okay.
I mean, is kashrus a theory?
Yes.
We don't call it a theory. We call it a God's law, divine revelation. In other words, if you said that Moshe came and told us whole Nigla, then someone came 1,000 years later out of the Midbar and came and told us Kabbalah, yeah, do you think Kabbalah would not have been accepted then? No Torah person would accept something. Because that's the whole, it had to be that came over the information. The Rebbe brings clearly that Matan Torah was more of a mystical experience than a Niggleic experience. The whole thing was mystical. What they see.
The Nisra was tangible.
Right.
I'm
And
just
the
saying so.
Nigla was
Shameless Hanira.
Right.
Yeah, there was definitely a mystical experience. That's what they witnessed. They witnessed something divine. I can't see how, even Kriya Samson had to be something divine. It wasn't just
It's almost that level.
there was some revelation that they saw. But they said, even Shivcha Shabiyah saw, yeah.
So what?
Ruach
Even
HaKodesh.
what they saw with Yechezkel.
The Navi of Ruach
The key thing is like this. But the key point is that we could relate to spirituality. So even though the whole point here is not that the neshama is not based on emunah, that we do know that it exists. The Dias HaMetzias doesn't mean that it's complete faith. That's not faith. That's not what we're talking about. I want to just qualify that. We're not talking about faith in the 10 spheres. Faith in the Seder Shtalshus. You could, just like we don't need faith to believe there's a soul, but that doesn't mean you understand the soul. A body can be dissected on a table. Doctors can understand its anatomy and its physiology and chemistry and biology and the whole thing. A soul cannot. So a soul, you're talking about right away something that has to be talked about in a whole different way. That doesn't mean you can't understand it. It doesn't mean you can't grow in understanding it. That's the key difference that he's saying here. Remember, he said the main thing in Yedias Anushis is Yedias HaMetzias because we only relate to tangible things. In general, energy is something for us harder to relate to than in so-called matter. That's what he's saying right now. So what's he saying? So Yeshem Zezav Nigla Teir Shemusik Rak Metzias Levad. Hashem Primus HaTeir Shemusik Rak Metzias Levad Moshkov Abir Dvei Tashvus. So just like we can extrapolate and say, this world tells us that something created this world. Remember we learned that tells us something more about that one created can't be like us. So what are you talking? You're talking Yedias HaMetzias. You know that it exists. You're trying to understand what he's like, but you're not going to fully ever comprehend what he's really like. Similar is also with Chochmah wisdom, that the inner dimension is only Yedias HaMetzias. It only knows that it exists, that the divine exists, the Elokus. The Zeu Pone Lo Yiro. And that's the meaning that you did not see the face. My face you will not see. You will not see the inner personality of me, of Elokus. Only Yedias HaMetzias, Achere. Is that Inyan Hashra? That's the meaning of Hashra. Well, this is the whole discussion on Hashra. Hashra is there. You have something that you relate to, revealed, but the inner dimension remains unrevealed, but it's there as well. Should we stop here?
10:35.
Let me just see how complicated this is.
He was talking about English word go.
I will stop here. To absorb. Enough to absorb. You understand my point that I made?
Was it just famous sometimes?
Sifra Ditznews.
Secret it's news.
Sifra Ditznews is a part of the Zohar. Very, very mystic, cryptic part. There's a Pirush on it from the Rizal.
About love.
There's a Pirush on it also from the Gra that ever brings.
To grow as a Kabbalist.
The big Kabbalist.
As a regular guy, without somebody like you, who knows all these things, two people sitting there, I can see all over the place. How do they get through these things? How do they know what these things are?
Dias Amitzias is called.
They skip the words, that's it.
I can't tell you. I mean, look, there's learning Chassidus at many levels. When I first started learning Chassidus, I came to understand it better. Yeah, we were just learning words. People read words. It's very easy.
That's a Russian tape shit. They would even know that Russian
It's
tape.
very sad, but the fact is someone can go through these pages and not know what the real point is. And they still enjoy it. They enjoy it because it's like mathematical. Where does Cyrus fit in, or where does Reyes fit in?
They won't even get that. Unless they know.
That's why there's not a class that passes that I don't talk about the interface, the purpose of all this in our lives. Well, it's fine. Let this is part. Why not? There's nothing here that does not have application. Even making that statement, I've said this to people who don't see this. Where'd you get that from? How do you know that? I mean, it's like someone asks such a question to me, it's completely off the wall. That there's application. Everything has to have application. Some people, even people who don't see this, will say that's true. I just can't believe it. It makes me laugh. It's like someone saying, Taylor, you just learned there's no Hira. That's ridiculous. Taylor's Melashon Hira. But this for sure has application. The whole point of this. Well, why do we have this?
You only know that from the Rebbe. There's always stressed that Taylor must have up. But a lot of people I don't think so. There's a lot of
something the Rebbe did was not Machadish.
I said he didn't even for you this and that, and this one in the family.
Torah means Torah. Like, what's that Lashon term, Lashon Torah?
What does the word Torah mean?
I'm not sure.
Hayra. It's a Hayra. The Hayres.
So what's a shayrish?
Hayra.
Show you the way. Show you the path.
That's one thing lost to it. Also Hayra. This is not the Rebbe. This is from the Radah.
No, I'm saying I'm sure it is. Sure it is. I'm just Torah. It's like
Hayra means it's a Wegweiser. It's a path. It's like a roadmap. Look, I can make a whole case with sources that everything has an application, but it's so simple, so obvious because why would we reveal these levels for what purpose? Even if you had to argue that the purpose is to refine us, to think more ruchnistic, but there's a purpose to that too. Why? Because that makes us bigger kalim. As simple as that.
no, but what if somebody is putting on tefillin?
We begin. It's simple. The rule goes like this: we begin as materialistic, narcissistic, selfish beasts. Hope nobody's insulted. And we are trying to, as a choplein narukus, we want that godliness should become our modus operandi. Yeah, it is a tzimtzum. Now, that's a process. It's a process of refinement, of thinking, feeling, behaving, on every level. The whole basis of Tanya, that this is close, relevant, that this is your capacity. The whole Tanya is basically. I told this to somebody, said to me, application. Tanya writes, the whole purpose of Tanya is to make Torah mitzvahs applicable, relevant, close, however you interpret close. What's close? Doing it physically, bring it close to you, what does that mean? It means making it something accessible. It's not accessible, and it's not loy b'shamayim. That's possible. Loy b'shamayim, loy d'chreik, loy ne'er but kol b'lechem, dover mei.
Probably if it was just...
One second, and if Tanya is the Tereshim B'Ksav Chassidus, it means all of Chassidus is that. That's the first proof. Without even that's K'ra Lomi, Svara Lomi, K'ra, the Alter Rebbe says it. Then the logic of it is also obvious. The logic is to have a relationship ultimately We start off Elovis B'Pshitis and Lakuz B'Yischashus. We want to change that. It should be Lakuz B'Pshitis and Elovis B'Yischashus. For this is Russian. We begin with that existence is real and God is a novelty. And you want God to be real and existence to be a novelty. That's the key. Which is the Chiddush, which is reality, and which is superimposed.
We're making an enemies?
I think so. First of all, the collective work of all the years and generations. It's a far more refined world in that sense. Refined as in anything that just simply were non-existent years ago. I don't mean refined personally. People still have personal choices and you have plenty of decadence. But there's a general matter has become more refined, technology-wise, politically-wise, civil rights-wise. There's many gifts. I see no reason. The Rebbe says it very clearly that the world is receptive because we live in a world that is comfortable with the invisible today. It's not a mystery. It's a visible thing people relate to. It just is that human responsibility still remains an elusive, the free radical. Let's put it that. Okay, so we did the first half of chapter 163, page 326, to the middle of 327. We'll stop here.